Family barbecue got harsh when my cousin asked why I'm still behind, and nobody defended me once. He didn't even say it quietly. He said it loud enough that the people around the outdoor table heard it over the sizzle of sausages and the burst of laughter from the kids running through the sprinkler. "So," he said, drawing the word out like he was setting up a punchline, "why are you still behind?" He held his beer bottle against his hip, eyebrows lifted, smiling like he'd just asked a harmless question about traffic. The sun was glaring off the foil trays on the trestle table, and the smell of barbecue smoke clung to my hair and the collar of my shirt. I had a paper plate in my hands, too much potato salad, a sausage I didn't want anymore, a single limp lettuce leaf, and I stood there for a beat like my feet had forgotten how to move. Around us, my aunt did that quick laugh that's half surprise, half encouragement. My uncle's mouth curled like he was enjoying a show. My dad made a noise that could have been a chuckle if you wanted it to be. My mom looked down at the tongs like staring hard enough at a sausage could unmake what was happening. No one said, "Hey, that's rude." No one said, "Don't talk to her like that." Nobody defended me once. My face went hot so fast I could feel my ears burning, and then the heat drained and left me cold and floaty. It's a weird thing, watching your own body react before you've chosen an emotion. My fingers tightened around the edge of the plate until it bent slightly, the cheap cardboard going soft from the condensation. I tried to swallow and my throat clicked. The backyard felt suddenly too bright, too open, like I was standing on a stage with no script. My cousin Callum kept smiling, waiting for my answer, the way people do when they think they've asked a question you owe them. Behind him, my younger cousin filmed the kids on her phone, oblivious or pretending to be. The char smell from the grill drifted across and stung my nose. Someone clinked ice in a glass. The music from a portable speaker thumped faintly, bassy enough to make the table vibrate. I glanced at my dad, because some ridiculous part of me still expects my father to be my father. He didn't meet my eyes. He looked past me at the lawn, like I was a stain on the day he didn't want to acknowledge. It was a Sunday, the kind of hot, sticky Sunday, where everyone is already irritable before they arrive, and my parents had insisted on hosting a proper family catch-up. They've been talking about it for weeks, like it was a project they could complete and then point to as evidence that everything was fine. Mom had texted everyone a list. Who was bringing what time to arrive, no drama please, with a laughing emoji that didn't feel like a joke. I'd almost made an excuse. I'd hovered over my phone on Saturday night with that familiar dread sitting heavy in my chest, telling myself I could fake a migraine or say work called. But Grandma was coming, and Grandma hates conflict and loves pretending everything is okay even more than Mom does. And I love Grandma. I came because I knew she'd be scanning the backyard for me the minute she arrived, and because she'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "There you are, love," like my presence mattered. Callum is my aunt's son, 2 years older than me, and he's the kind of person my family loves to hold up as proof that life is simple if you do it right. He has a steady job with a title everyone understands. He bought a house with his partner last year, and my family talks about it like he discovered fire. He's not cruel in an obvious way. He's the kind of cruel that hides inside banter, the kind that comes with a grin, so if you flinch, you look unreasonable. For most of my 20s, I laughed along, because laughter is cheaper than being the topic. I'm 30 now. I rent a small unit that I can afford because I'm careful and because I've spent a lot of time rebuilding after a few years where my mental health took me out at the knees. I work in a job that sounds vague to my relatives, which means they treat it like a hobby. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have the neat milestones my family uses as proof you're doing adulthood correctly. I do have a life. It just doesn't translate well into their scoreboard. When Callum asked why I'm still behind, he was talking about the scoreboard. Behind who? I heard myself say, and my voice sounded too thin to belong to me. I try to make it light. I try to match his tone. My mouth did that automatic smile that shows my teeth without reaching my eyes. Callum laughed. "Oh, come on," he said, spreading his hands. "You know what I mean. Everyone's moving forward. Jobs, houses, babies, and you're still you." He said the last part with a little shrug, like I was a stalled car he'd driven around. My aunt, his mom, made a quick sound that could have been disapproval if she'd followed it with words. She didn't. She just turned it into a laugh. "Callum," she said like she was mildly scolding a dog that jumped up, but her eyes were bright. Don't what?" Callum said, still smiling. "I am asking. We all worry, right?" My uncle gave a little snort. "It's not a crime to ask," he said, and reached for another sausage. Mum's shoulders lifted as if she was going to step in. Then she looked at Dad. Dad didn't move. Mum's shoulders dropped again. She turned back to the grill and flipped something aggressively, like she could burn the discomfort off the meat. I could feel everyone's attention on me in that sideways way. People pretending not to stare while still listening. The kids shrieked and ran past us. Water spraying in a bright arc. Someone yelled, "Careful," and then laughed. The normal day kept happening around my humiliation, which somehow made it worse, like the universe was indifferent. "I'm not behind," I said, and I hated how defensive it sounded. "I'm just not doing the same things." Callum's smile tightened. "But why?" he pressed. Like genuinely. "What's the plan? Are you saving for anything? Are you okay?" He said okay like it was a diagnosis. I could have lied. I could have said something tidy. I could have handed him a future plan he could approve of. Instead, what rose up was all the years of swallowing and shrinking and pretending I didn't care. "I'm tired," I said too honestly. "That's the plan. I am tired." Someone laughed, short, surprised, like I'd made a joke. It wasn't Callum. It was my dad. That little laugh did something to me. Not because it was loud, not because it was cruel on its own, but because it confirmed what I already knew. This was funny to them. I was funny to them. My struggle was a family anecdote. Callum raised his brows, encouraged. "See," he said, gesturing at me like I'd proven his point. That's what I mean. Always dramatic." "Callum," my brother said suddenly from the other side of the table, voice low. I looked at my brother, so fast my neck twinged, hope flaring stupidly. My brother, Ethan, was holding a plate, chewing slowly. He didn't look at me. He looked at his food. And then he did the thing he always does. He stopped halfway. He didn't say anything else. He swallowed. He turned away to answer someone who'd asked him about work. The moment passed like a wave that never breaks, just rolls back out. Nobody defended me once. Callum took a sip of his beer, satisfied. "Look," he said, leaning closer, lowering his voice like he was about to give me wisdom. "I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying, you can't stay stuck forever. At some point, you've got to catch up. Catch up." Like my life was a race I'd fallen behind in, and the only acceptable goal was to rejoin the pack. I stared at him, and for a second, I saw myself from the outside, standing in my parents' backyard holding a sagging plate, trying not to cry, while my family watched like it was entertainment. I felt this slow, heavy clarity settle in my chest. Not rage, not even sadness exactly, just the bone-deep exhaustion of realizing I'd been hoping for something that wasn't coming. Because if I'm honest, the thing that's made me behind in their eyes isn't laziness or lack of ambition. It's that for years I was busy surviving in ways they never had to notice. It's that I spent my 20s trying to be functional in a family that only values you when you're impressive or useful. It's that I learned to take up less space because taking up space made people annoyed. It's that I was the one mom called when grandma needed groceries. The one who sat in emergency departments with relatives and made small talk to keep everyone calm. The one who canceled plans because dad was in a mood and mom needed someone to absorb it. None of that shows up on a resume. None of that turns into a mortgage. And even if it did, they'd still find a way to call it extra or dramatic because that's the slot they've built for me. I set my plate down on the table carefully. My hands were shaking, but I kept my movements slow. "I'm going inside," I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. Mom glanced up, alarm flickering. "Don't," she whispered, like I was about to do something embarrassing. I looked at her. "Don't what?" I asked quietly. Her jaw clenched. "Don't make this into a thing," she said under her breath. Callum laughed. "She's going to have a moment," he announced at the table like a sports commentator. My dad finally looked at me then, eyes narrowing. "Sit down," he said, not loud, but with that tone he uses when he expects obedience. I felt something in me harden. Not in a dramatic, triumphant way. In a small, quiet way. Like a door clicking shut. "No," I said, and my voice barely shook. "I'm not doing this." Dad's eyebrows lifted in surprise. Mum's face went pale. Callum looked delighted, like he'd managed to spark something. "You're not doing what?" Dad asked, and there was a warning in the question. "I'm not being the family joke," I said. "I'm not answering questions about my life like I'm on trial. I came for Grandma. I came to eat sausages and talk about nothing. I didn't come to be evaluated." For a second, nobody spoke. Even the kids shrieking sounded farther away. I could hear the faint hiss of fat on the grill. Then my uncle scoffed. "Oh, here we go," he muttered. Mum's voice went tight. "Please," she said, eyes flicking around the table, already thinking about who might be watching. "Not today." Dad's mouth curled. "See," he said to no one and everyone at once. "This is what I mean. Always looking for a fight." Callum shrugged like a saint. "I was just asking," he said, palms up. "She's the one making it weird." My throat burned. I could feel tears pressing behind my eyes, hot and humiliating. I blinked hard, refusing them. Crying would become proof. Crying would be another story later. She lost it at the barbecue. I looked past the table toward the patio where Grandma sat in the shade, fanning herself with a paper plate. She was talking to one of my aunts, smiling politely, unaware, or maybe aware and choosing not to see. Grandma's smile has always been half kindness, half survival. I forced my breath slow. "I'm going to sit with Grandma," I said, and I walked away before anyone could stop me. My legs felt wobbly under me, like I'd stood up too fast. Every step across the lawn felt like walking through glue because I could feel their eyes on my back. I heard Mum call my name, soft and sharp, and I kept walking. I sat beside Grandma and took the fan from her hand gently. "There you are, love," Grandma said, looking up at me with that warm relief. "You all right?" I smiled and almost broke my face. Yeah, I lied, because the truth would spoil her day and because I'm still learning that not everything is mine to carry. Grandma patted my knee. "Good," she said, and then she leaned closer, voice lower. "Your cousin's mouth is too big." I froze. "You hurt?" I asked, barely moving my lips. Grandma's eyes were soft but sharp. "I have ears," she said, and her hand tightened on my knee. "And I have eyes. Don't let them talk you small." The words hit me harder than any insult because they were the first thing all day that felt like protection. It was tiny, quiet protection, but it existed. I swallowed, nodding, and stared out at the backyard. Callum was already laughing again at the table, telling a story like nothing happened. Mum was busying herself with plates. Dad was talking louder than before, reclaiming control of the atmosphere. Ethan stood by the fence, scrolling his phone, pretending he wasn't watching. Nobody defended me once. But Grandma saw. The rest of the barbecue was a blur of pretending. I stayed near Grandma and helped her with tea and offered her the nicer chair. People drifted over in small waves, talking to me rather than with me. Careful now, like I might explode. My Aunt Diane made a point of being overly sweet. "How are you, darling?" Like sweetness could erase what she'd laughed at earlier. Callum avoided me for about an hour, then made a show of clapping me on the shoulder and saying, "No hard feelings, hey," as if he'd been the injured party. Mum acted like a wound, brittle and quiet, and every time I caught her, I felt like she was silently begging me to go back to being easy. At some point, Dad cornered me near the kitchen door as I was refilling water. "You embarrassed your mother," he said low. I stared at the jug in my hands. The water sloshed slightly. "You laughed," I said, and my voice came out flat. "You laughed when he asked why I'm behind." Dad's jaw tightened. "You're too sensitive," he snapped, like he was tired of the conversation. "It was banter." "It didn't feel like banter," I said. "It felt like you all agreed I'm failing." Dad's eyes narrowed. "If you don't want people to ask, maybe stop giving them reasons," he said, and then he walked away before I could respond. I stood there in the doorway with the jug, heart pounding, and I realized something bleak and freeing. He was never going to understand because understanding would require him to admit he's harmed me. It's easier to label me sensitive than to face the fact that he enjoys the power of making me small. When the barbecue finally ended and people started leaving, hugging and laughing and promising to catch up again. Mom stayed busy stacking plates as if movement could prevent emotion. Dad went inside early. Ethan left without really looking at me. Callum hugged Grandma dramatically and told her he'd visit soon, and she smiled politely because Grandma is polite even when she's tired. I helped Grandma to the car and buckled her seatbelt, my hands gentle. She squeezed my wrist. "Come see me," she said, "without all this." And she made a vague gesture toward the house. "I will," I said, and I meant it. After Grandma left, I stood in the driveway alone for a second, listening to the distant sound of neighbors' lawnmowers and the last of the music fading from inside. My chest felt bruised. I could still smell smoke in my hair. Mom came out and stood beside me, arms folded tight. For a moment, she didn't speak, and the silence between us was thick with everything we weren't saying. Finally, she whispered, "Why can't you just let things go?" I stared at her, and the sadness I felt wasn't sharp anymore. It was tired. "Why can't you ever defend me?" I asked quietly. Mom flinched, like the question was a slap. "I didn't want to make a scene," she said automatically. "I was the scene," I said. "They were laughing at me. That's a scene. You just prefer that kind." Mom's eyes filled, not with empathy exactly, but with shame and annoyance tangled together. "You know how your father is," she said, like that explains everything. "And you know how I am," I said, and I hated that my voice cracked slightly. Apparently. Mom's mouth tightened. She looked away toward the street, as if searching for an escape. "I can't deal with this tonight," she said. I nodded slowly. "Yeah," I said. "I know." I went home and sat in my shower with the water running hot until my skin turned pink, because it was the only place I could let my face change without anyone watching. I didn't sob. I didn't have a dramatic breakdown. I just sat there with my arms wrapped around my knees while my brain replayed the moment Callum smiled and asked why I'm still behind, and my dad laughed, and my mom looked away, and my brother started to speak and stopped. I kept replaying the part that hurt most. Not the question, not even the laughter, the absence of defense, the way nobody reached for me. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "You okay?" That was it. 3 words. No apology. No acknowledgement. No, I should have said something. Just a cautious poke, like he was checking if the problem had settled. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have written a paragraph. I could have unloaded everything. I could have begged him to understand. Instead, I typed, "I'm tired of being laughed at." He didn't reply for a while. Then, "Callum's an idiot." I almost laughed. Almost. Because even now, it was safer for Ethan to blame Callum than to blame Dad. Safer to make it about one person's mouth than about the whole family's comfort. I typed, "Dad laughed too." A long pause. Then, yeah, he shouldn't have. It wasn't much. It wasn't defense. But it was the closest thing to a crack in the script I'd seen from Ethan in years. I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of my fridge. I thought about the scoreboard my family uses. House, marriage, babies, titles. I thought about how behind in their language really means not making us look good. I thought about how many years I've spent trying to earn a version of love that doesn't require me to shrink, and how every time I've asked for it, they've called me sensitive. And I thought about Grandma's hand on my knee and her quiet, fierce sentence, "Don't let them talk you small." The next morning, Mom texted me, "Sorry yesterday got tense. Callum didn't mean anything. Can we move on?" Move on. Like the goal is forgetting, not changing. I didn't answer straight away. I made coffee. I sat at my table. I watched the sun move across my floor. I let my body feel what it felt without trying to tidy it. Then I replied, "I'll move on when I'm not the joke. Please don't invite me if I'm going to be discussed like a project." She didn't respond for hours. When she finally did, it was, "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I stared at the message until the words blurred, and I realized that to her, bigger doesn't mean more painful. It means more visible. That's the part she can't tolerate. So here's where I am. I don't know if this becomes a dramatic family split, or if everyone pretends it never happened until the next barbecue, when someone asks another harmless question with a grin. I don't know if Dad will ever look at me and see a person instead of a punchline. I don't know if Mom will ever choose me over the smoothness of the day. I don't know if Ethan will ever speak up in the moment instead of afterwards in vague texts. What I do know is that something shifted in me in that backyard. Not because I stood up for myself in some triumphant movie moment. I didn't. I walked away and sat with Grandma and tried not to shake. But I saw the pattern in full sunlight, with smoke in my hair and my family's laughter in my ears, and I can't unsee it now. Family barbecue got harsh when my cousin asked why I'm still behind, and nobody defended me once. And that was the moment it finally clicked. I've been waiting for them to pick me. Waiting for them to say, "Hey, stop." Asking myself what I could do differently to deserve it. And maybe the truth is simpler and uglier than that. Maybe they like the version of me who takes it. Maybe the behind they're talking about is just me finally catching up to the fact that I don't have to stand there and be measured. I'm not behind. I'm just done running a race I never agreed to.